While it was not uncommon for movie characters to be named after famous people, it was not often that it happened the other way around. Looking back on old movies, it was very distracting when a regular character with a seemingly insignificant name ended up with a title that later became insanely recognizable. While these were merely coincidences at the time, iconic names such as Homer Simpson or real-life celebrities like Tom Hardy have shared a title with fictional movie characters in films that were made way before their names became readily associated with them. Of course, there were some instances where characters were named after famous people intentionally. Examples included David Herman as Michael Bolton in Office Space or even Michael Cera as George Michael on the television show Arrested Development. But other times, the similarities were entirely accidental and only appeared strange in hindsight when rewatching the movie years later. It's truly shocking how many movie characters were accidentally given famous names, and now it's impossible to watch those movies without thinking about different people or characters entirely. 11. Ward Bond as Bert and Frank Phelan as Ernie. It's a Wonderful Life, 1946. The holiday classic It's a Wonderful Life has gone down in history as one of the greatest Christmas movies ever made, but upon rewatching it, viewers may notice two characters who sound oddly familiar for different reasons. That's because George Bailey encountered two men whose names later became known by children worldwide, the police officer Bert and the taxicab driver Ernie. This seemingly insignificant moment was notable because, 23 years later, Bert and Ernie became iconic Muppet characters on Jim Henson's children's entertainment show Sesame Street. Plenty of people have noticed this connection, and it became an urban legend that they were given these names as an intentional reference to It's a Wonderful Life. However, Jerry Jewell, one of the original Sesame Street writers, insisted that the characters were in no way connected, via SF Gate. Jewell said they confirmed this with Sesame Street's first producer, John Stone, who reiterated that the characters' names were purely coincidental. Sadly, this was never confirmed by Muppet creator Henson during his lifetime. 10. Raymond Burr as Steve Martin. Godzilla, King of the Monsters. 1956. In the world of monster movies, no creature was more famous than the Japanese building-destroying kaiju Godzilla, and in the world of American comedy, no personality was more acclaimed than the actor and comedian Steve Martin. While logic would point to that being where the comparison ended, for viewers who watched the re-edited American version of Godzilla, King of the Monsters, Steve Martin was also famous for a different reason. That's because the main character in this Godzilla movie was also named Steve Martin. In Godzilla, King of the Monsters, an injured American reporter named Steve Martin was brought to Tokyo, where he recalled a series of disasters caused by the sea monster Godzilla. While the actor Steve Martin was not known for his roles in monster movies, he has been part of many acclaimed comedies such as The Jerk, Plans, Trains and Automobiles, and Cheaper by the Dozen. Martin did not come from the sea like the terrifying Japanese monster, but he certainly made a splash on the comedy scene, as he's remembered as one of the greatest live performers ever. 9. Michael Murphy as Detective Shaft. Brewster McCloud, 1970. Some names have become so recognizable that it's hard to associate them with anything else, and this was certainly the case for Detective Shaft. This name would lead most people to imagine the private detective John Shaft from the blaxploitation 1970s film series with an iconic funk soundtrack by Isaac Hayes. However, the truth was that just 1 year before the release of the first Shaft movie, there was also a different Detective Shaft played by Michael Murphy in the black comedy Brewster McCloud. This was not even where the similarity ended, as both Detective Shafts showcased a fondness for turtlenecks despite having no intentional connection to one another. The most famous version of Shaft was played by Richard Roundtree in the blaxploitation movie, and this version of the character came from Ernest Tidyman's original 1970 novel. While it was nothing more than a coincidence, it's still surprising to learn that both Shafts were invented in the exact same year.